you. Recording. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So I'm in Spain at the moment. I'm in southern Spain in an area called Andalucía, and the town I'm in is called Tarifa, and it's the southernmost town in mainland Europe, I think it is. So it's very exciting, and a lot of restrictions are lifted here over the summer, and tourism sort of slowly kind of starting to return a little bit. So I'm here for work specifically, but also I always come over to Spain in the summer for a little while, because my dad lives in southern Spain as well. And I work mostly for Lonely Planet, doing guidebooks. I can show you, I've got this one, which is one of my sort of recent ones. And I'm freelance, so I write for Condé Nast Traveler, the Telegraph newspaper. I do a few bits and pieces for The Guardian in the UK, and for some of the in-flight magazines. And a lot of those are unfortunately on hold at the moment, just with everything that's been going on, but they are slowly starting to come back. So things are slowly starting to reopen sort of over this side, and it's starting to get very busy work-wise after what's been a very strange year for travel.
Can I ask, is travel writing as glamorous job as it sounds?
So I get asked that a lot, and it has its perks. It definitely does, and I've been to some incredible places that I would never have had the chance to visit, or perhaps the funds, kind of on my own time. So it opens up all kinds of wonderful opportunities. But I guess the thing is that at the end of the day, it's work. So I'm there to do a job, which is very exciting, very rewarding. But it's not a holiday, which is what people tend to think I'm sort of sitting by the pool, drinking cocktails, and there is a bit of that, absolutely. But normally it's, a quick dip in the pool, try one of the drinks, and then sort of dash off to the next place. And it tends to be most travel trips for work tend to be very, there'll be a lot to see in a limited amount of time, so they're very busy. So there's not so much sort of lying around and looking at the scenery. But I do, with most trips I try to add on a few days, either at the end or at the beginning, to sort of have a bit of a break as well. So, a bit of both. But it's a very exciting job, and I really enjoy doing it, and I wouldn't change it at all for anything.
This is a big question, everybody wants to know this. What are the perks? Do you get free things, like free nights in hotels or free meals?
Yeah, okay. So that's it's a good question, and it varies completely depending which publication I'm working for. So Lonely Planet specifically, for any of their guidebooks, it's all funded by the company, and we try and do everything anonymously to get sort of a completely unbiased opinion of somewhere without any freebies. So that's them, and that works really well for the guidebooks, because you're gathering so much information over in-depth information about an area. Other publications, some are happy for you to go and arrange a stay through the PR company at say a new hotel or somewhere like that. Sometimes the only way to get access to somewhere that you need to go to on a tight time frame is to get some help from a particular tour operator or something like that. So it really varies, but all travel writers are, at the end of the day, we're writing for our readers, so we're always as honest as we possibly can be. And even if something was a hosted trip, if something wasn't up to scratch, I would never be afraid to say, this is wonderful, but actually this particular part of this hotel needs a bit of work, or that kind of thing. So there are perks, but the responsibility is always to our readers.
Does anyone else have questions? I have a bunch, but you want to go? You need
Sure.
to.
How much do you rely on the local populace for information? And do you do a lot of research before you go? Like, do you just like say, oh, I'm going to go here and pick it? Or do you like choose a country first and then a place within a country? Or
Yeah, very good question. So I think for me, and I think this probably applies to most other travel writers as well, we tend to specialize in a particular destination or a particular type of travel or a particular niche within travel. So for me, that's usually been Spain, which is where I grew up. And I still spend about half my time here. So that's why I do so much work on Spain. And I always work on areas that I already know quite well, and that I visit myself on a regular basis and have contacts in that area. So for instance, this place where I am now, Cadiz in southern Spain, I've been coming here since I was a kid with my family. And I lived here for a while a few years ago, and I still come back at least once a year. So it's somewhere that I know really well. If it was somewhere completely new to me, I probably would say I'm not necessarily the right person for that job, and there's probably somebody else who knows that area much better than me and would be in a better position to share everything they know about it. And you had a second question. There was
about how much you rely on the local populace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Info.
Yeah,
like where's the place to eat around?
Yeah, so and that's a very good question, because I mean these days there's so much information on the internet, and it's kind of overwhelming, and you've got no idea who wrote what's reliable and that kind of thing. So having local contacts is so important for any of the work I do. And I always everywhere that I work on, I'll go and try out in person and try and speak to the owners wherever I can and sort of get a feel for a place before I recommend it or anything like that.
And just one more question. I don't want to monopolize.
No, go for it.
But like, how do you speak Spanish? How important is it to know another language? And then the cultural piece. When you go from one area of Spain to another, are there cultural differences that you have to like take into account, religious differences or whatever?
Yeah, also great question. So I do
Speak
me.
Spanish. I'll put myself on mute.
That's what we're here for. So I went to a local Spanish school. So I grew up speaking Spanish, and I speak both English and Spanish, and I do a lot of writing in Spanish as well, which is quite exciting. And it really helps. I mean, even as a traveler, in knowing a few words of whatever language they speak in the destination you're going to can really help, and it helps you just engage with people who live there on a completely, just a few words can make such a big difference in meeting people locally. And so your second question, I've forgotten what it was. Sorry.
I forget my own question. I think the cultural differences.
Oh, cultural,
like,
yeah.
One city to another,
Yeah, absolutely.
Rural versus city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's also something that's really important when it comes to writing about a place. I go to a lot of different places. I do a lot of travel, for instance, I used to, this year's been a bit different, but I used to do a lot of travel in India, which obviously has a lot of cultural differences with say, Western Europe. And it's important for people to know whether there's different how people dress locally, what so even here in Spain, if I was going to a church, I'd probably put a shawl over my shoulders, not go in sort of short shorts and spaghetti straps and that kind of thing. And things change regionally, sort of anywhere you are, and it's really important to just ask people what's appropriate, what isn't, and that kind of thing.
And do you eat late in Spain?
Yes.
Right, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, so sort of typically here people go for lunch at maybe 2, 3, but you could be finishing lunch at maybe 5 o'clock. So then people don't go out for dinner until 9, 10, even 11. It's actually very interesting because with the restrictions that they've had in Spain because of the pandemic, there's been a curfew. So everything's been brought forward, and people have been, there was a specific campaign to ask people to come out for dinner earlier, to go for dinner at 7:30 or 8 rather than 9:30 or 10. And everyone was saying, oh, will people in Spain do this or not? And actually, I've seen people out a bit earlier than usual this time. So it's very interesting. I imagine it'll probably go back to late dinners once things calm down, but very interesting.
Yeah, on a personal note, I was in Barcelona, and that eating schedule was so the opposite of my schedule. I don't think I could ever go back. I can't even imagine living there. Every time I wanted a cup of coffee, all the stores were, everything was closed. I don't like eating dinner after 8 o'clock, let alone at 10 o'clock. Yeah, I don't know how they wake up in the morning and go to work.
Yeah, I think I guess when you live here, you get used to it, and that's where there's sort of that break in the middle of the day, and quite often people will go home and have lunch at home, have a couple of hours off while it's really hot, and then go back to the office in the afternoon, and so then they're finishing a bit later, so you're having dinner later. But it's all mostly sort of just tied to the weather, because it's so hot that if you go out for dinner at the moment, we went out for dinner at, I think it was 8 o'clock yesterday, and it was still really warm, sort of almost too warm to want to eat anything. But and a lot of places have adapted to earlier eating times as well. A lot of restaurants in places where there are a lot of tourists. So in Barcelona, most places, even if Spanish people aren't coming out for dinner until later, a lot of places will open earlier and are very happy for people to come in earlier. So that's a good thing. And a lot of places are now, I've noticed, opening sort of throughout the day. They'll open at lunchtime, at 1 o'clock, and then stay open all the way through to the evening. So you can pop in the afternoon and that kind of thing. So it's all changing a little bit. But
Can you recommend your favorite places so that we could go there too?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, I haven't been everywhere, and there's a lot of places I'd still love to go to. And once things pick up, going to those places I've always wanted to go to and never had a chance to will be sort of a top priority, and I'm sure for a lot of other people. So obviously, I love southern Spain, which I've told you about. And if anyone wants any tips on Spain, I can tell you about those. But I also, Kerala in India is a really beautiful part of the world, where I've spent quite a lot of time. And I'd love to go back there whenever things open up enough for that to be safe for everyone involved. Where else? I have family in Australia, in Melbourne, and Australia is a beautiful, beautiful country. Obviously, it's the kind of place where you'd want to have enough time to explore a decent chunk of it properly. So it's kind of a big trip for anyone who doesn't live there. And obviously at the moment it's off limits to everybody. Where else? I've spent a lot of time in Thailand, particularly in southern Thailand, which is beautiful for anyone who's interested in beaches and islands. Really good food, very good sort of regional southern Thai food. Where else? Greece I love. It's beautiful. And I think Greece is open to tourists now, I think. And obviously there, so many different islands to choose from. You could go to a different one every year and still, never get to all of them. I particularly like a couple of islands sort of northeast of Athens, called Skiathos and Skopelos. And the next one over from them, Alonissos, is also a really, really beautiful island. And they're sort of a slightly more difficult to get to. Skiathos is more touristy, but the other two are sort of another hop on the ferry. So they don't tend to be quite so overrun as some of, places like Santorini and Mykonos and those kind of places. Where else? I don't know if there's anywhere in particular you're interested in. Feel free to ask me, and if I know anything about it, I can see if I can help.
In light of COVID, are there certain countries you can go to that are fairly safe in Europe, or?
Yeah, so that's the tricky situation at the moment. Things are changing sort of quite quickly with COVID, and it is true that a lot of areas of Europe cases are starting to go up again, including the UK and Spain and France. So it's all quite last minute, and a place that somewhere that seems somewhere that you might consider safe at the moment, in a couple of weeks the cases might be quite high. But for instance, talking about Greece, they've put a lot of effort into vaccinating everyone on the islands, so that because they're such a big tourist destination, so that people could so that they would be ready for tourism for the summer. So there's been a lot of work going into that. And most countries are doing everything they can to make things safe for people who live there, and anywhere that's opening for tourism as well. And a lot of places are asking for travelers to either be vaccinated or to have done a test before they travel to their country. So it's obviously a tricky question of reopening tourism and managing cases. And I guess we'll see how it goes over the next next month or so, over the high summer season here.
Have you ever disliked a place you had to write about? And what do you do about that?
Yeah, another great question. So obviously there are places that I love, and other places that might not be quite the right fit for me as a holiday destination for whatever reason. But I do think most there's nowhere that you can travel to that you won't learn something from or find out something worth knowing. So even though there are places that I might not necessarily go back to, I'd never wish I hadn't gone. And in terms of writing about it, I mean, it's totally fine to say, this particular town is really lovely and it's got a beautiful historic centre and lots of interesting sites, and then the next town over is it's more of a transport hub. There's nothing, not any sites to see and that kind of thing. So I try and get that across in my writing as much as possible, whilst also being respectful of everyone.
Just a personal story. So my husband, he speaks some Italian, so we like to go off the beaten trail in Italy. So a lot of the American tour books are written a lot about specific areas where the Americans like to go. So I found this place and there wasn't a lot written about it. And it said it was a fishing village, but it turns out it's this place where tons and tons and tons of Italians go. And and there was nothing in it in America. Like we thought, but it was packed. The beaches were packed, and they were selling things like I've never saw on the beaches. I called it the Walmart of beaches, because they had like sweatshirts and socks and food. And I mean, I absolutely hated it there. And it wasn't anything like the small fishing village you think it would be. But it really, like in retrospect, it's a fun memory,
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like it was something that it was something that kind of caught your attention and you still remember it. So that's exciting in itself. Yeah, it's the same. Obviously, when wherever you're writing about, there'll be, for whichever publication it is, there's sort of a particular audience in mind, whether it's sort of an American readership or a UK readership, but part of the fun is in finding those kinds of places as well. And it's the same here. There'll be places that no British tourists particularly want to go to or have even heard of, and they'll be absolutely packed with Spanish people along the beach. So I guess it kind of depends what kind of trip you're after. you know, what you want to do, what kind of local experiences you want to have, and that kind of thing.
And the food, do you recommend food, the best food, your favorite food? Do you recommend going off the beaten trail to get food? When I was in Portugal, I went off the beaten trail for food, and I did not know what I was looking at and what I was getting.
Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge, you know, when you're in a place that's new to you, and you obviously, you know, you want to try as many different local specialities as you can, but sometimes it can be, you know, it can be tricky to know what's what, or what to order, or that kind of thing. And these days there are loads of really, really wonderful food tours in most destinations. You know, even in small towns, there's quite often someone who runs food tours. So that's a really great way of doing that. And they would, you know, they might take you to some better known places, but you can also, most of them usually understand that you kind of want to get off the beaten track a bit. You don't want to be just with all the other tourists. So a lot of companies do off the beaten track tours as well. Barcelona, for example, there are some great food tours with people who live there, who specialize in regional gastronomy, so Catalan cooking, and will take you out for the evening to a bunch of their favorite bars and tell you, you know, which wine to go with which tapa and that kind of thing. And that's a really good way of you know, getting to know somewhere.
You know, I'm a vegetarian, and when I was in Austria a few years ago, they were not well suited for vegetarians at all. They had a lot of meat and potatoes, and I just thought, I don't eat. I mean, I eat fish and seafood, but it's a landlocked country, so they didn't have a lot of fish. And when they did serve it, it was never prepared right. It was always too dry, or just wasn't to my liking, put it that way. So I wound up eating a lot of fruit, a lot of vegetables, and casseroles, that kind of stuff. It got a little tiresome after a while. Otherwise, I loved Austria. I loved Vienna, but the food, I wouldn't go back to the food. Definitely would not.
Yeah.
The pastry is very good. Viennese pastry is very good. But, so you have to be careful about that. You have to be careful about
absolutely.
That.
Yeah. I'm also vegetarian, and it can be really challenging. Things are slowly improving, and there are a lot of places now where you can get vegetarian options that you'd never have thought you'd be able to get anything. You know, a lot of sort of big cities will have a few even vegan cafes. So it is improving, but it can be a challenge, especially, you know, if you're in a country that's known particularly for its kind of meaty cuisine or seafood. So it's getting better, but it can be a challenge. I used to find Spain really difficult food-wise, and I sort of had just endless plates of fries and sort of very simple salads. But things are getting much better here now. So veggie food in Spain is really good now.
I've not been there. No. On my bucket list.
Absolutely. Let me know when you're going, and I'm happy to send you some recommendations.
Okay. When you do your writing, do you include like restaurants and places to eat, that kind of stuff as well? Like hotels? Yeah. You include all that in there? Okay.
Yeah, and restaurant places to eat are usually one of the main things that people want to know about. And it's such a, you know, getting to know a destination through its cuisine is such a great way of learning about it. So it's definitely something that I focus on. Yeah.
And you include landmarks and cultural events?
Yeah. Okay. It depends who I'm writing for. But Lonely Planet specifically, we try to cover a bit of everything: cultural sites, places to eat, hotel recommendations, sort of activities, kind of hiking, that kind of thing, wildlife spotting, all that kind of thing. And you know, there are other publications that focus on other particular things. But yeah, sort of a bit of everything, really.
Well, in 2018, in January, I went to India for 3.5 weeks, and I went to two wedding ceremonies and stuff, and it was very interesting, so different. And I mean, I've done some traveling. I've been to the Caribbean. I've been to Europe 3 times. I did my own itinerary for our 20th wedding anniversary. And I said, where do you want to go? And he said, oh, let's go to France. And I was thinking, oh, you want to go to Paris? I don't really want to go to Paris, but he wanted to go to the south of France. So that's where we went. And then I said, well, we're going to be there for 16 days. So where else do you want to go? So he said, well, let's go to Ireland. And I was like really happy because I had never been there. And, so I said, okay, let's go. I guess my point is when you're deciding where to vacation, what do you recommend? I mean, do you want to go with tourist, industry people, like go on tours, or do you prefer to do your own itinerary and figure things out for yourself? Like when we went to Ireland and France, I contacted the hotels myself. I rented the cars. He got the license so he could drive on the wrong side of the street, the whole thing like that. So it was a challenge, but I found that it worked out better than going through a tour group. So I don't know, I guess it's a crazy question, but when you travel, or would you recommend going through a tour group or going, now that I'm older, maybe I should go on a tour group,
Yeah, fair, good question. I mean, there's obviously something to be said for just saying, I want to go to wherever for 2 weeks, and someone else organizes it all for you, and you don't have to worry about it. You just pay the money and it's all sorted. And there are some tour operators that run wonderful trips and could put you in touch with people that you might not otherwise find. But I personally I like to organize my own trips and then arrange things with sort of smaller tours within that. So maybe a walking tour of a particular city for half a day, or a hiking trip out into the hills somewhere, or that kind of thing. So I quite like having the flexibility to, if I like somewhere, to then stay an extra few days rather than be tied into a particular itinerary. And I know that's not necessarily what everyone wants. So the other thing is with COVID at the moment, obviously booking things independently, the more separate things you book, the more you've then got to rearrange if it does come to that. The more different airlines and hotels, and that's more separate refunds and that. But at the same time, booking directly is almost always best for local hotels and restaurants, and for them, they benefit the most if you book directly with them. So there's that side of it, and I guess it also depends what kind of destination you're going to, and sort of how easy it is to get around by yourself and arrange everything. So yeah, if there's anywhere specific you were thinking of going.
I don't know. I love travel. I don't know. I think travel is the best education.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
I found in Italy, they have really good tours. So we travel alone, but we might sign up for a tour for the day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to go up the volcano, not a good idea to go without a tour guide. And also once, to see the Roman ruins, everyone on the tour bus was British. And of course, my first thought was, this is like an Agatha Christie. And they were so pleasant, and we had so much fun. It was so much fun.
Was everyone really polite because they were British?
Well, and funny.
Yeah, absolutely. And going to say a big historical site, it's so valuable having someone to show you around and talk you through the history of whatever building or site it is. So yeah, always for big sites like I don't know, the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, I'd always recommend going with someone who can tell you a bit about it. Or a lot of places had they might come back post-COVID, but a lot of places had really wonderful audio guides, had sort of developed those in recent years. So you'd have an expert, a local archaeologist or historian sort of talking you through it at your own pace as you went around the sites. They've sort of disappeared because they're sort of a touch surface, and they needed to be disinfected with COVID, but they might come back afterwards.
What's your opinion about riverboat cruises in Europe? I've always wanted to take one, never have.
About riverboat cruises.
Yeah, in Europe, yeah.
It's not
They're
something I
expensive, but
know.
yeah.
It's not something I know a huge amount about, to be honest. But you know, cruises can be a great way of seeing a few different places if you're on limited time, and you know, very relaxing way of getting around. But it's not a topic that I know a huge amount.
Especially a smaller group. I prefer something smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, you know, they're always sort of smaller day cruises you can do in a lot of you know, European cities and that kind of thing, which would be a lovely way to explore as well.
Have you ever done one now?
No, not a big cruise.
No, okay.
And that's a whole sort of separate industry. And I have travel writer colleagues who specialize specifically in cruises. So it's a whole you know, a whole thing to itself. And at the moment, obviously, it's been hugely affected with everything that's going on. And there are cruise ships sort of, you know, sort of just waiting offshore all over the world, which is bizarre.
I wanted to ask, do you have any recommendations for someone who would like a job like you have to get into this stuff?
Yeah, I do get asked that quite a lot, because it's you know, it's something that there's not necessarily a clear path of you know, what, you know, you do a particular degree and then move into you know, sort of move on into it. So I think most travel writers kind of come into it from completely different backgrounds. I've got colleagues who used to be tour guides, and because they know so much about a particular area, they then moved into writing about it. Or you know, people who used to be teachers in a foreign country, English teachers, and now they write about that area. So I think the main thing is that it's work, and a lot of people come into it thinking it's you know, it's quite easy, and it's a very challenging job, and it's very competitive. So there's a lot of sort of late nights and staying up late writing, you know, because someone needs an article due suddenly at the last minute by, you know, the day after tomorrow, which is especially the case at the moment with COVID restrictions kind of lifting and then coming back in. And you know, at the moment, 1 week where we're writing about, say, a few weeks ago from the UK, you could go to Portugal, and suddenly everyone was writing about Portugal, commissioning Portugal stories, and then suddenly a week later you couldn't go, and that was all cancelled. So it's all so there's a lot of last minute stuff. I think sort of the main thing that can help you is to really think about what you personally can bring to a job like this, sort of what your background is, what your particular interests are, what kind of niche you could focus on to begin with, even if you then sort of expand into other areas. But that really helps, and that's sort of what really helped me was knowing about Spain. And that sort of got me working for a few different publications, and then from that I was able to move on to sort of other destinations and other types of writing. What else?
Do you I'm sorry,
No,
do you
no,
go
go for
to
it.
them with the idea, or do they come to you with the idea?
Yeah, also again it varies, and it depends on the publication. I do a lot of pitches to you know, different magazines, different websites, if I've got ideas about somewhere that I want to write about. But the ideal position to be in is for editors to come to you about a particular story, because they know you specialize in whatever place it is, and they think, oh well, we need a piece about, I don't know, food in Barcelona, and they'll know that you're the go-to person for that kind of thing. So it's a bit of both. It's a bit of both, and it changes all the time. Sometimes editors will say, we want loads of articles about Greece. Anybody who's got an idea about Greece, email me today. So it's yeah, a bit of everything.
I had a friend who was a food photographer. So his job was to
Yeah.
go around and take pictures of food, of plates.
That sounds very fun.
restaurants, like a whole bunch of different things. And that was an interesting job because he
Yeah.
got to travel, he got to go places.
He'd have got to try
Photograph
lots of,
food.
lots of great places. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I don't do this so much, but a lot of my colleagues work very closely with photographers on, you know, sort of big magazine spreads and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of crossover in working together.
Do you make videos too?
Some people do. I don't, because I mean, I do a bit for social media, just sort of for fun. But I just find I'm usually so busy doing the writing and the
writing,
researching and the interviewing and that and, you know, all that stuff, that I've barely got time to take pictures and do the videos as well. But that, you know, there are some people who are very good at doing all those different things as well. There are some great blogs out there, and great content creators who do all kinds of stuff.
These are great questions. Anybody else has any more?
Well, we want you to come to New York and Hoboken, Isabella.
I have been to
Well, you
Hoboken.
can.
I've been twice.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, the last time was, I think, 2019, I think, whatever the summer was before sort of all this happened. Yeah. And I love New York. It's great.
I'll tell you that the food tour that you need to take, the pizza tour.
Oh, okay. Sounds great.
You're getting me hungry, Heidi. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. What time is it for you guys? You're
11:07.
in the morning. Too
Okay.
early for lunch.
second breakfast, maybe a coffee.
Anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, I don't think so. But you know, if there's anything in particular about, you know, a particular destination that anyone's thinking about going to or want some information from about, I'm more than happy to answer emails if anyone wants to get in touch at any point. And if you're ever coming over to Spain or London, I'm, you know, very happy to chat and meet up with anyone.
That's so nice.
Thank
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
And
Yeah,
thank
it
you.
was
Very
fun.
informative.
Bye. And thank you for tuning in, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks
thank you,
everyone. So
Heidi,
lovely to
for
talk
having
to you
us.
all.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.